What up, root wranglers? We got a little bit of a problem here. We got some girdlers and they are ready to strangle some trunk. So let's talk about what they are, how bad things can get, and how we can fix them. I'm standing next to my beautiful Aprium tree, and it was in a 15-gallon pot. I finally got it in the ground, and I noticed something a little concerning, and that's that the graft joint right here was extremely low to the ground. I thought, did I plant this too deep? And I realized I never checked when it was in the pot how deep it was planted. I know that might not seem like a huge deal to some of you, but that can potentially cause a humongous problem that you're not going to see for maybe 2 or 3 years, but that could ultimately ruin your tree's life. I'm talking about girdling roots, and this is a problem that has shown up on many of the trees that I had on this property, and it's something that I don't want to have a problem with in the future. So today, we're going to talk about what girdling roots are and how you can ultimately help save your tree for the long run. But before we hop into this Aprium tree, let's take a brief little stroll down memory lane. A few years ago, I noticed my macadamia nut tree struggling pretty bad, and there actually was a hole opening up on the trunk of the tree. And I knew a little bit about girdling roots, so when I looked at the tree and noticed that it was going straight into the ground, there was no root flare, and the dirt was actually piled up pretty high around the trunk, I said, let's take a look. Lo and behold, it was an absolute nightmare. So I decided it was time to take out some of these roots. Little did I know, it was going to be way worse than I could have ever imagined. In this shot, you can see where the highest root was impacting the tree trunk, leaving that huge indent. Over the next couple years, I would slowly excavate more and more and more, and I would just reveal even bigger tragedies. This tree was so deep in the ground, I could not believe it. And because of that, there were multiple layers of girdling roots that had been strangling this tree for years. No wonder it was dying off. Fast forward a couple years and all that hard work is paid off. This macadamia nut tree is looking healthier and happier than ever. But look at how far down I had to go to reveal that root flare. You can see the hole in the trunk is closed up. It's less than 1/3 of the size it was before, and this tree is thriving. So let's move back on to the Aprium tree and see if we can prevent a big problem like this in the future. All right, let's take a closer look. We're here at the trunk of the Aprium, and you can see the old soil level here because this is where all the roots are. And you can see it's right about the graft joint. And that is what ultimately tipped me off to knowing that this tree was originally planted too deep in its pot. And it's a little bummer I didn't catch it till now, but luckily we caught it at all. See, as this tree gets older, it is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and so are these roots. These roots are going to keep growing, and you can see that this one is already going around this trunk. But even now, right here, this is as far as I can push this. And this thing's only going to get stronger and bigger as well. So eventually, this is going to cut into the trunk of the tree, and that is going to prevent the tree from uptaking any nutrients that it needs to live. And ultimately, it'll die. So let's go ahead and fix it on this tree before it becomes a real problem. And this, folks, is where it gets messy. We're gonna have to pull some of these roots out, hopefully put them in a new direction or just cut them out entirely. This one, I'm just gonna pull, boom, just like that. Now, if you had an arborist out here, they'd be using an air spade to basically blast away all the dirt and everything from the surrounding roots, but I ain't no arborist, and all I've got is water, and that's worked really well for me in the past. I use the hose on a full setting, not keeping the water flowing at 100%, but it's a good way to get water pushing the dirt out from the roots, helps you see a little more what's going on. As you move more dirt out of the way, you also got to remove more roots. And for some of these more fibrous small roots at the top, I'm just raking them away. I want to get down and find that root flare and see exactly how far down we really got to go with this thing. And as you can see, I'm sticking my finger further down there. It really has a way to go. So time to excavate more of these roots. Alright, I'm not actually going to make you listen to that music all that much longer, but basically you got to go through so many rounds with this, and you'll notice I'm trying to be cautious. I'm checking it out, seeing which way some of the roots are going, see if they can be kept, see if they can be pulled out and shifted to the side, but in the end I am having to pull a ton of actual roots, and this is damage to your tree. I mean, it's not good, but it's better than the alternative, and that is that your tree dies anyway in a couple years. This angle gives you a better view. It's important to note that you're going to have to excavate somewhere else other than the tree as well, because as you're blasting the dirt out of the root ball, you're going to need it to go somewhere, and it'll go with the water, so you need somewhere lower in elevation next to the tree for the water to go. Now you can see I'm putting my finger down here, really trying to find that root flare, and we are getting much closer, but I'm still looking to remove some of these bigger roots and see if they're pullable. Right here, got a pretty good chunk, getting some of the good stuff out, and that'll move nicely. It's unfortunate, but I am sacrificing a lot of this new root growth. You can see some of those pure white looking roots towards the outside, and that's everything that the tree has grown since I put it in the ground. And honestly, it hurts to see it all go, but I'm here for the long haul, and hopefully you are too with your trees. Anyway, here's this big chunk, moving it over, and you can see just how it was circling, and now we want to get it to the side. Tree roots are just meant to go outward, away from the trunk and below the trunk, and when they're in a pot, they just kind of keep trying to find new areas to go because it can't go out further. So that's why we got to fix it, and sometimes you got to pull out the pruners, get down in there and get some of the ones at the base, clearing up anything that may interfere with or obstruct the growth of the tree trunk. Taking a step back, you can see just how far down we've excavated. That entire twisty looking sucker growth on the side there was completely buried, and you can actually see the root flare starting to develop. The trunk starts getting wider and wider, and that's really where you want to get down to. I'm feeling more comfortable with where it's at here. Some of these roots are still sticking up quite a bit, so this next phase is going to be about getting those to sit down, get them moving outward away from the trunk, and we are going to set them in place with extra muddy dirt. It's a bit of a tedious process, and I made sure to keep my pruners around just in case there were any roots that were getting unruly and wouldn't really go where I wanted to go, and just made those decisions on the fly. The mud does look like it's a little bit higher right here, but some of those roots are pushing up on it, so I'm hoping the weight of the water and the mud will keep those suppressed down. And yeah, gonna water it in, fertilize it, put a little bit of compost on top. Again, we're not trying to build this soil up, so I'm making sure to keep it pretty dang low right around the trunk. But that's it, folks. We done solved our girdling root problems here, and hopefully this teaches you a little something, helps you be a little choosier when you're picking your trees at the nursery, and maybe gives you some insight in how to plant them properly. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash that subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.